additional report to Congress on the National Threat Assessment report to Congress. At any rate, Admiral Mike Mullen and Secretary of Defense Robert Gates were there to testify to the Congress, and they had both came out, and I don't have the exact words, but they both came out in favor of repealing Don't Ask, Don't Tell. So this was official testimony to Congress.
Cool.
It was, the Secretary of Defense, and I believe Admiral Mike Mullen is the highest serving uniformed officer. They used words like "in my belief," and a lot of Republicans have come out and said, well, that's just two people's opinion. The highest, just about the highest two people there are, but in the military structure. But what they're proposing is a year-long investigation where they go through the military and interview people and ask people at all levels of the military how they feel about repealing it, to give sort of a summation report in a year.
Sure.
As to what the feeling of the military is. Taking the stance that public opinion has changed sufficiently, international opinion has changed sufficiently, has military opinion changed sufficiently?
Right.
Well, okay, so some Republicans are saying it's their opinion. We pay them to be in that position because we trust their opinions more than just about anyone else. I mean, they are qualified.
Sure.
The retort tends to be, well, we want the top leadership. Just because these two guys thought so doesn't mean that the Admiral of the Navy and that, this person on the Joint Chiefs and that, they want the collective leadership to all come out with one voice. And it's like, well, it's really kind of funny that in every other circumstance you want them to follow the chain of command. But in this case, you want them to all have a referendum. But at any rate, oh shoot, I forget now. But the other big piece that was news today is that General Colin Powell signaled his support for efforts to overturn Don't Ask, Don't Tell by throwing his support behind the strategy of the top military leadership to repeal Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy. And by top military leadership, they mean the Secretary of Defense and the highest ranking uniformed officer and the Commander-in-Chief. Now, what's interesting here is Colin Powell was part of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. He was chaired the Joint Chiefs of Staff in '93 and helped draft Don't Ask, Don't Tell.
Well, but that's okay. It's okay to change your mind if it's right.
Well, Powell began saying last year that he believed times had changed since the early '90s and that the policy warranted a serious review. But Wednesday's statement is the first time he's endorsed efforts to end the policy.
Oh, good.
And his quote, let's see, I haven't actually read this yet, but in the almost 17 years since the Don't Ask, Don't Tell legislation was passed, attitudes and circumstances have changed. The principal issue has always been the effectiveness of the armed forces and order and discipline in the ranks. I strongly believe that this is a judgment to be made by the current military leadership and the Commander-in-Chief. It is also a judgment Congress must make. For the past 2 years, I've expressed the view that it was time for the law to be reviewed by Congress. I fully support the new approach presented to the Senate Armed Services Committee this week by Secretary of Defense Gates and Admiral Mullen, Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. So Admiral Mullen holds the position he used to. I will be closely following future hearings, the views of the service chiefs, and the implementation work being done by the Department of Defense.
Wow. Okay, so that's positive news.
It's very encouraging.
It's basically what people that have been saying give Obama a chance have pointed out is that Don't Ask, Don't Tell was passed by Congress and it has to be repealed by Congress.
Right.
It's not likely to be repealed by Congress unless the armed forces leadership comes out and says we can do without it. What they did the other day was to recommend this. What did he call it? I'm not seeing it. This approach to take a referendum essentially, to see where the military stands. Public opinion has shifted dramatically. Our major first world allies throughout Europe and England, Great Britain included, allow homosexuals and bisexuals to serve openly in the military. And certainly there's been, when some of the newspaper folks who've been embedded with units have taken informal polls with the units they've been embedded in, most service members seem to know of at least one gay person that they serve with. These are obviously not out gay people, or they'd be kicked out of the armed forces.
Right.
But, the notion that, and I think one of the quotes that he used was something, or actually Admiral Mullen, I think, he had used, was that it's about time. Let's see, how did it go? Something about having to hide who you truly are in order to defend the people you care about.
Right.
Right. And I understand the line about maintaining order and discipline in the ranks. Obviously, that's a crucial part of maintaining an armed force, but it only goes so far when you're dealing with basic civil rights. And when you have a policy like don't ask, don't tell, it creates two classes of citizens. It simply does.
Yeah.
And so I think there's an argument that it does call for some more drastic action.
No, and most people seem to be in agreement with that. But the consensus is that in order for the law to pass, especially in the Senate, where the vote would be so close, the vote would be close to talk about it.
Right.
You can't get it onto the floor without 60 votes.
Right.
There are Republicans in the Senate that would probably support it only if the military wanted it.
Right.
And so the path to get from where we are to where we're going, given our current political climate, is to ask the military if they want it.
Right.
Sure. That makes sense.
Yeah, I don't think the principle is in question.
Right.
Certainly the polls of the American public have shown overwhelming support. And while it's certainly clear we don't set our own military guidelines based on how any other military in the world runs, it is a measure of international opinion when our first world allies, especially our strongest ally in England, already allow this, and they seem to be able to keep order and discipline.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. So it's good.
So it was good news.
Yeah.
Yes.
Anyway.
The ball's rolling.
Yeah. Yeah. I've said this before. Clearly we've got a lot of battles to fight, but we're doing very well, and we are going to win. In the end. And
Maybe another 13 years.
Sure. And I say we're going to win, and that sounds like it's like there's a loser, but the truth of the matter is